The recruiter is the only character in the game Squid who has neither a name nor a number. At first, he appears before the viewer as a stately man in a formal suit and with a briefcase, and in the second season, he leaves the project by committing suicide. What caused this act? What did the recruiter want to prove? Well, what role does he play in Squid Game? Let's figure it out. The recruiter has very little screen time, but one of the most sought-after Korean actors was cast in the role. The casting of a star of such magnitude speaks to the special importance of the character. In my opinion, the recruiter personifies Karun. He transports people from the world of the living, where life seems sad and hopeless, to the world of the dead, where there is hope. Watching this character, we can understand a lot about the creators of the Squid Game. We first see the recruiter at a subway station. He approaches a desperate Ki-hoon and offers him a game of Takchi. The man announces the seemingly simple rules of the game. If Ki-hoon wins, he gets 100,000 won, about 7,000 rubles. And if he loses, he must pay this amount. The recruiter's job is to find people who are willing to risk their lives for money, and he does it brilliantly. He is charming, calm, polite, and quickly captivates many with his charming smile. Imagine you were offered good money for winning a simple children's game. This is what temptation looks like. After all, the recruiter, by paying money, inspires trust in the players. As a result, it is very difficult for the poor guys to refuse the main offer. They receive a card with a phone number and, for the most part, agree to unclear conditions. The recruiter offers Ki-hoon a choice of 2 envelopes, blue and red. There is a theory that depending on the color chosen, a person becomes either a player or a guard. But I think the colors do not matter. I can assume that this is a reference to the movie The Matrix, which was already mentioned several times in the Squid Game. After Ki-hoon's first loss, the recruiter offers to replace the money debt with slaps, and with each slap in the face, he humiliates Ki-hoon even more. Thus, he chooses a person who is ready to do anything for money. The rest is a matter of technique. The recruiter shows Ki-hoon that he knows a lot of personal information about him, which scares the potential victim even more. He offers Ki-hoon to continue the game in the future, and hands over an invitation card. It is interesting that Ki-hoon, who does not seem to consider himself a naive fool, easily succumbs to temptation. So, with no other choice left and time running out, In-ho made the fateful decision to become a participant in the Squid Game. The promise of a huge cash prize became his last hope to save his wife and unborn child. So he became participant number 132 in the Squid Game, where he had to face the most unsightly sides of human nature: greed, betrayal, and cowardice. At the end of the first season, we see the recruiter again in the subway. Ki-hoon won the game, miraculously survived, and was about to leave for the US to be with his daughter. But he accidentally saw the recruiter from afar and ran at him in anger. He wants to know how to find the organizers of the game to stop it forever. But the recruiter also sees Ki-hoon, quickly runs into the train, and leaves. Here, the question arises: why did he run away? Most likely, this meeting was accidental, and the recruiter was not ready for a conversation in the subway because the game he prepared for Ki-hoon had to be played without witnesses. Perhaps Ki-hoon himself was not yet mentally prepared for it. He needed to spend 2 more years searching for a recruiter and reach a state where he would be ready to do anything for revenge. For 2 years, Ki-hoon's henchmen combed all the subway stations in search of a recruiter. A whole gang of dubious characters from a credit office participated in the capture. And finally, 2 of them, Mr. Kim and Woo Seok, found him and began to follow him. Meanwhile, the recruiter was putting on quite a show in Central Park. He was offering the homeless a free choice of 2 items, a bun or a lottery ticket. All but one chose the ticket, and apparently this upset the recruiter greatly because he then dumped the remaining buns on the ground and, as if in hysterics, began to trample them. It was as if he wanted to show the people that they had made the wrong choice. You threw away the buns, not me. You, in pursuit of illusory, unlikely wealth, rejected your daily bread. That's why the recruiter thinks that people are trash. Instead of step by step getting out of their difficult situation, making efforts and overcoming themselves, they hope for a random win, wait for a miracle, and don't want to do anything. But the recruiter doesn't talk about it yet. He shows his attitude with his actions. Moving on through the plot, we see that Mr. Kim and Woo Seok want to capture the recruiter, but in the end, they themselves fall into his hands. He knocks them out, ties them up, and puts gags in their mouths that look like bones. This scene, of course, refers to the ridiculous poses of Butch and Marcello from Pulp Fiction. The recruiter made the bandits play a game of rock, paper, scissors, and offered Russian roulette as a punishment for the loser. He inserted 1 bullet into the cylinder, explained the rules, and putting the revolver to his temple, pulled the trigger. By doing this, he allegedly demonstrated his full involvement in the gameplay, honesty, and at the same time, his own madness. but in fact he inserted a dummy cartridge into the cylinder. This is visible from the pierced capsule. Then, for several rounds, he simply scared the players with blank shots. But when the recruiter decided to tighten the rules and inserted 4 more cartridges, one of them was real. This time, the game became truly deadly dangerous, and during the game, Mr. Kim nobly sacrificed himself and was killed. And the mortally frightened Woo Seok could now tell the recruiter any information he needed. That is, this whole story with Russian roulette was needed only to find out the location of Gi-hoon from them. And of course, I'm not completely sure about the version with the bullets. Perhaps it's generally forbidden to use non-dummy bullets during filming, but one bullet was clearly different from the others. The recruiter knew where Gi-hoon lived and headed there. They had a tense conversation, during which the recruiter told Gi-hoon about himself, in particular that in his youth he himself worked at the games. At first he burned the bodies of the losers, and then he was transferred to the soldiers. The recruiter even recalled the incident when he killed his own father when he lost in a game. The recruiter's hand did not tremble even in these truly terrible circumstances. At first glance that we are shown a cruel and cynical person, almost crazy, but you can look at his story from another side. We don't know why he ended up working in the game in the first place. Maybe it was his father who contributed to this development, and that's why the recruiter was angry with him. We weren't told any details, so it's hard to draw any conclusions. But we did learn the main thing. The recruiter had been watching players for years, saw their meanness and greed, and eventually became completely disillusioned with people. Gi-hoon calls the recruiter a watchdog of the regime and asks to take him to the organizers of the games. The recruiter, of course, is unhappy with this comparison, but he thinks that Gi-hoon will be able to change his idea that human life is worthless. Like the homeless people who chose a lottery ticket, the recruiter considers the participants of the Squid Game to be trash, because they also do not want to get out of their life situations on their own, but are simply looking for a miracle. Moreover, when they begin to understand the rules, they are not stopped by the death of others like them, but on the contrary, it adds excitement and greed. The recruiter gives Gi-hoon a chance and offers to play Russian roulette. If Gi-hoon wins, he will be able to take a specially prepared card in the recruiter's pocket, where all the contacts of the game organizers will be. That is, he specifically said that he had the contacts before the game. Gi-hoon only needed to take a revolver and shoot the recruiter, or engage in single combat with him, and this option was suggested by the recruiter himself. After all, Gi-hoon's main task was to find the organizers and stop the games. But for some reason, he started playing a deadly game with the recruiter, with an unknown and tragic outcome. In my opinion, this is what disappointed the recruiter. He realized that the only person who could change the situation turned out to be unsuitable from his point of view. Ji-hong remained the same gambling addict who simply got lucky in the 33rd game of Squid. The recruiter had no hope left at all, and according to his internal code, he shot himself. Although, if you look closely, he hesitated a little before the last shot, but quickly pulled himself together and finished what he started. In the comments, be sure to write what other characters you would like to analyze and discuss.